Hello everyone and welcome to BHD Studios. I have these shoes in here for no particular reason other than celebrating the release of the brand new Leica M11. Look at this beauty right here. And so here are here's my shoes and cameras. There's no reason for them to be here, so let's just pull them out of the way. Move these cameras where I think it looks the most aesthetically balanced. What do you guys think? Does that look good? Alright, so let's start the video now. Hello everyone and welcome to BHD Studios, and let's take a look at the brand new Leica M11. And as you look at this, and if you're really into your M's, you can right away see the differences, the improvements over the previous M. But if not, the only way you know this is an M11 is just right over there. It says M11, and then there's other little subtle updates. And so we will talk about the difference between the new M11 and the previous M10 series, and what I thought about shooting with it. So let's start the video now. Actually, before we start the video, I'd like to thank KEH for sponsoring this video. KEH is the original reseller of professional, collectible, and everyday gear for camera lovers everywhere since 1979, right over there. They're older than some of you that are watching this video right now. They purchase gear directly from photographers like us. We are camera nerds, and so are they. They renew and resell at fair prices and truly become part of an endless cycle of creativity, community, and opportunity. And so at the end of the video, I will give you some discount codes if you're either buying or selling. But thank you, KEH, for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the Leica M11. So let's go over the major specs of the new M11, then we'll talk about the design, and then the unique sensor and processor combination, and finally sort of the performance and features of this new M body. So to begin, the regular retail price on this will be $8,995 USD. And that's for the body only. And that is actually the same price as the M10R currently. So we'll find out what happens with the M10R, if they drop the price or they're going to keep the price the same. But there are some significant changes for Leica M shooter, they can see the differences right away. And for the rest of us that aren't M shooters or don't shoot with it often, we're kind of looking around going like, well, how do we know this is a new M11? And of course, that's the main spot right over there. So we'll talk about that. There's very subtle design changes. Some of them you almost need an M10 next to you. And so I don't have an M10, so let's just pretend I have one here, and we will go over each of the sort of like the major changes. There is a new battery here, a new 1800 milliamp hour battery from the previous 1300 milliamp hour battery, and it does come out similar to the SL and the SL2 and the Q and the Q2, but it is a different battery than those two. And as well, there is no bottom plate, as you saw. You just pull that out, and there is a USB-C connection on the bottom. Now, at first, some might think, well, that's a weird place to put it, but it actually makes a lot of sense, considering that these cameras, again, they haven't changed much in the past 70 years. And so, of course, I already knew if they're going to put a USB-C connection, it's going to have to be on the bottom here. And as well, there is dual memory options in here. One is actually built in, and the other one is just a regular external card that you put in, XDXC, up to 2 terabytes. And there is a new full frame sensor. It's a backside illuminated CMOS sensor with triple resolution technology. So it has 60, 36, and 18 megapixels using the full sensor for all 3 resolutions. And we'll talk about that. And the new Maestro 3 processor that's currently in the SL2 and the SL2S with the latest interface that makes it more intuitive. And especially if you have a Q2 that I have here or even SL, it's all going to make sense. And as well, in terms of exposure, there's up to 60 minutes of the long exposure. And the top shutter speed's even faster at 1/16,000th, but that's because they have an electronic shutter in here, different from previous. So you have a wider exposure capabilities for specific styles of photography. So let's go into talking about design right now. So this is the black chrome finish, and it uses a high quality aluminum top plate instead of brass. Now, some people might think, oh, why are they putting aluminum instead of brass? Well, because this is 20% lighter than the brass version. So the silver chrome will come with the brass top, but it is going to be 110 grams heavier. So this one right here is 530 grams with the battery, and the silver chrome is going to be 640 grams with the battery. And so just as a comparison, the M10R was 660 grams. So it's already 20 grams lighter for the silver chrome with the brass plate, because I think a lot of the weight savings is that there is no longer a bottom plate. And so there is a weight difference, but the price is still the same. It'll be just under $9,000. So you have to decide, do you want the brass top but heavier, or the aluminum top but lighter? But in terms of finishes, at least at this time, either silver chrome or black chrome. And even the finish, it has a bit more kind of a texture to it, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Duratec technology made by the Citizen Watch Company on their titanium watches, like where, if you scratch it, that's my nails coming off. See that? And now it's gone. See, it's kind of a rough texture, but it's not rough. But I mean, there is a nice texture to it, and it's supposed to be very strong. And I am curious to see what the silver chrome looks like and see if it does the same thing. And just again, as a comparison, this is my Leica M7, my film camera right here. Beautiful camera, and this weight of this is 610 grams. And the Leica MP is 600 grams. So again, this is 530 with the battery. 610. I have a lens on here as well. So this is actually lighter than a film M. So you will immediately feel it. So Leica M improvements are always about subtlety. So for the average person, they may not notice the difference. Or if you're shooting with a Noctilux, maybe 100 gram savings isn't a big deal. But if you're shooting with any of the Crons or even like these more compact, the 35 Lux here, you will immediately feel the weight advantage of shooting something like this. If you're gonna shoot all day, I actually think the black chrome might be the way to go. Now, they also mentioned in the literature, I'll embed pictures in here, but they did talk about sort of like the modernizing the look. So again, it's very subtle, but they did kind of narrow this top section here. And so they basically did that to kind of really emphasize. So when you make this narrower, it actually kind of makes this look bigger. and then this section here is going to be a little bit wider, right? And so the proportions are slightly different. Now and that sort of that line continues all through the back. And so looking at even my film M, you can sort of see that there is definitely a slight kind of a difference between that. Very slight, but you can see it. And as well, if you notice, the M10s had a little custom function button over there. I never liked custom functions in the front. Doesn't matter what brand. You sometimes forget that it's there. They moved it to the top right here, which usually for Leica, they try to keep the top plate on the rangefinders as clear as possible. But I think that's a really nice integration there. You have that top button. And at the end, I'll let you know how I've set up this M for my shooting styles. And as well as the button layout, if you notice, it does look different from the M10. The play, the FN, and the menus. And if you look at the Leica Q, guess what? You have the play, FN, and the menu. If you look at the SL2, it's exactly the same. And so if you have a Q2, if you have an SL2, and you have the new M11, this is all gonna make sense. And like the SL2 and the Q2, as I showed before, this is the new battery here, like that, and it doesn't come out until you push it up and in, and here's that new 1800 milliamp hour battery, and in back behind here is the memory card. Now the Q2 is kind of cool where they have the battery here and then they have the memory card slot there. Now I think Leica maybe eventually can maybe move this over here and maybe even eventually have a dual card slot, but obviously the architecture, the inner architecture of this M11 is probably quite similar to the M10 and maybe even the M240, so that's kind of where the card slot is right now. But as I mentioned, there is a built-in 64 gigabyte card as well. And there also is an updated LCD screen here. It's up to 2.3 million dots. The previous M10R had just over 1 million dots, and you could immediately tell the difference when these things are sharper. So here I'm gonna go into the menus, and this is one of the changes as well, is this main interface. So if you're shooting like this, and you go into menus, and this is a touch interface, right? So all these buttons are touch interface, and especially if you're looking at photos that you've already taken and you punch into your images, you can immediately tell the difference that this is 2.3 million dots, and you can actually check for critical focus or things like that. And so that's great that they upgrade this rear LCD screen. As well as if you are doing any critical focusing. So if you have a Noctilux and you don't have an EVF yet, you can use this to focus, punch in, and with those extra pixels, you can do critical focusing. So now let's talk about the sensor and processor that's in here. It is a 60 megapixel sensor that also has a 36 and an 18 megapixel option to increase the dynamic range, as well as a better handling of noise. Also, as you shoot at lower megapixels, the files are smaller, and so you actually get faster camera performance, extended burst lengths, and smaller files. So you can actually get more images on here. And I'll insert some images where Leica gives you sort of like stats and numbers and kind of the benefits of going with a lower megapixel. But no matter what megapixel count you're shooting at, 60, 36, or 18, you will still get a full sensor readout, and it's going to be full 14-bit images. And then when you shoot at 36 or at 18, you will get 15 stops of dynamic range. And of course, this sensor has no low-pass filter for increased image sharpness. And they also improve the coating on top of the sensor. They call it a special infrared as well as a UV cut filter made from 2 thin cemented layers of glass. And what that does is it really improves the correction of oblique rays of incident light. And so again, that will help with the image quality. And this new sensor also, you can see right over here, has a new base ISO of, look at that, 64. And those of us that shoot film, remember Chrome 64. And I think that has been done on purpose. So that is the new base ISO from ISO 100. With this new sensor, Leica says that you will get improved details in certain colors like reds as well as blues. They tend to oversaturate when you take pictures, and you kind of lose details in the reds and the blues, but this will actually be able to recover those, sort of mute those colors a little bit, so you still get the details details, and again, you'll get that Kodachrome look, and you would have seen that at the beginning of my images that I posted. So great image quality, great way that it handles colors, sharp images. And as well, you do have the updated Maestro 3 processor that is in the SL2 and the SL2S. And that is kind of I would say it's almost overkill on the M11, considering that the SL2 and the SL2S shoots 4K video, and it does all these other things, has autofocus, and this doesn't shoot video. And so having such a powerful processor in here is actually awesome. It just runs smoothly and no hiccups, and just a really great shooting experience. Now moving on to performance and features, as I mentioned, ISO 64 is the base ISO, up to 50,000 ISO, up from the previous 100, and shutter speeds, very similar shutter, I think, than from the previous one. 1/4000th of a second top mechanical shutter speed, but it allows you to go to 1/16,000th of a second in electronic shutter. So again, as long as your subjects aren't moving, so you're not going to get rolling shutter, you can get away without having to use a ND filter if you want to shoot it at, like imagine you have a Noct, right? And you want to shoot it at f.95 or f1, and you're hitting maximum shutter speed. Often you got to put an ND filter. Well, with ISO 64 and 1/16,000th of a second electronic shutter, you can get away with shooting at f1 if you wish. Now, as I mentioned, this new battery here, 1800 milliamp hours from the previous 1300 milliamp hours. In addition to that, this operating system and this new processor is more efficient. So SEPA rating with the live view on, you get up to 700 images on with one battery charge, and up to 1700 images with the OVF, and as well as the more efficient operating system and processor. And we talked about the various storage options. So let's go into the menus again. So like I said, it has that main sort of control center, and it is all touch interface, right? So if you want to go into the exposure compensation, you can just either use this, or you can just slide it with your fingers like that, right? So, and all these buttons are all touch, and you can do a touch interface. So that's very intuitive. And the menus, again, so from here, you press once, you have your main interface, and you press a second time, now you're in your folders, your 5 folders. So we're gonna sort of scroll through here until we get to, I forgot what it's called, the storage options. Here we go. So you go to storage options, and here it tells you DNG plus JPEG. It first goes on your SD card, and then I guess as a backup, it will go to the internal 64 gigabyte storage, or you can do DNG plus JPEG. So it's called the backup. And then this one here is called the split. So it'll put DNG on the interior, so in the 64 gigabyte, and then on your SD card, it's the JPEG. And people might think, well, why would you do that? Well, because you can give the SD card to your client or whoever you hand off to, and they can download it. And of course, JPEG and DNG, you can set them at different resolution. And so that's called the split mode. And here is DNG and JPEG only on the SD, so it doesn't use the interior. And then vice versa, you have the DNG plus JPEG first on the built-in memory. And then as well, you can do is when you go to, let's just go your storage management. You can then, let's just say you went out, you either forgot your memory card or you didn't have a memory card, and you want to transfer everything from inside the camera to your SD card. You do have this backup memory going from the built-in memory onto your SD card. And here, even when you go to format, you can choose which one you want to format. So it's really cool that you do have both built-in memory as well as external memory. And again, you can go up to SDXC 2 terabyte cards. And as I mentioned before, you do have a USB C type right over there, and that is type 3.1 Gen 1, which allows you to charge. And that's kind of what I do. I get home and I charge it. And you're wondering like, well, it's on the bottom, how do you charge it? I usually, like the lenses here, I just leave it down like this, and I let it charge. And there actually is a blinking light over here that blinks green, and there is another blinking light over here that blinks red when you are charging. And you can turn the blinking light, you can choose which ones to turn on or off while it's charging. And as well, you can pull the images off of this and put it directly onto your computer. And they also do give you this cable here. It's a USB type C. And it even says, look at that, it's even branded. It says Leica to Lightning. So it looks like what they want you to do is to connect this in the field when you are shooting. And so I'll read directly from Leica what they say here. It says, updated connectivity features for the Leica M11 will be available through a new firmware version in the second half of 2022. So I'm just using the prototype app right now, but it's going to be updated. And it says, this will enable the new M11's advanced connectivity capabilities, which will elevate users' mobile workflow and enhance the Leica Photos app with the possibility to embed location data, access images via Bluetooth connection, and allow increased transfer rates. The M11 is compatible with Apple products and accessories and offers unique abilities with the included Leica Photos cable. And so that's, again, this cable here that you get. And I did ask Leica, well, will this work on Android as well? And so there is an Android version of the app. And as it does say, this app will be enhanced at the second half of 2022. So we'll see at the time, but it looks like they will first do it with Apple products and specifically the iPhone because of this cable. And it's a nice braided cable as well. And then we'll see what happens with the Android app, which in general usually comes a little bit later. Now, in terms of accessories, I don't have any of the accessories with me, but there is a new VisoFlex 2 EVF, which has 3.7 megapixels of resolution. It has a metal enclosure, a built-in diopter, +3 to -4, and it has a 90-degree tilt. And I'll embed pictures in here, and this will work with the M10 model, but you do need to update the firmware. However, the older VisoFlex will not work on the new M11. As well, there is a really cool new hand grip that has a built-in Arca Swiss type connection for tripod mounting, but as well it allows you to access the battery and memory card without having to remove the bottom plate, which was always a problem before. And there are going to be other accessories, leather cases and other things, but those are probably the two main ones, is that EVF, which would be great when you have that punch-in feature, magnification. Actually, when you magnify your images, when you're shooting, I can't show you in here right now, but when you are magnifying, the image itself is stabilized. So not the image, when you capture the image, but when you punch in, especially if you have like a 135 or 90mm lens, you're going to get a bit of shake and it's harder to focus. And so with that, when you punch in, the image itself is stabilized to help you to focus. So that, I think, is great. And so let's go over how I set up the camera. So I'm going to pop on a lens here, and I'll show you how I have this M11 set up and how I shot with it for the past week. All right, so here is the 50mm Similux. Thank you again, KEH, for loaning me this lens, as well as this 35 Similux FLE, the floating lens element. This I actually took it to Germany with me, and as well as since I've been back, I tested both these lenses on the SL2, SL2S, and now on the M11, and these are great lenses. And so this is my setup here. For ISO, if you're going to be switching ISO quite regularly, which I do. Some people don't. They just put it to 64 or whatever, and you can just pop this up and change your ISO. But for me, your first your custom function button is actually this rear dial. So without me pressing or doing anything, right away it's exposure comp. And so you do have to be careful when you do that. You don't accidentally hit that. And then if you press this in, you hear that click? Now it's an ISO. See how fast it is? So right now, at my thumb, I have access to exposure comp because I like to shoot in aperture priority. And then you have ISO. So that's pretty fast. And then this top button right over here, I have this set up for the 3 different DNG. So here's the DNG at 60 megapixels, DNG at 36, and DNG at 18. And I can just quickly scroll between those 3. And so that's my main setup here. And if I go in here, I know everything else I can just quickly change. If I want to change the white balance, again, you just press that. And again, you can scroll through here or use this rear dial here and then press in and you've picked that feature. Other features here, like if you want to change the size of your JPEGs right here, you got the 60 megapixel JPEGs, you have the 36 megapixel JPEGs, as well as the 18. And like I said, you can shoot at, let's just say small JPEG, but large DNG, right? They don't have to match. And let's kind of go in through here, the menus here. I'm not sure how much of this has changed from the other M here, but let's just go through here. And as well as a different style. I like the standard file type for the Leicas right here, although the black and white looks really nice. And then auto review is always off for me. Noise reduction, I leave it on. It doesn't matter for me because I have the DNG file anyways. And then shutter type, I leave it on hybrid. So if I do go over 1/4000th of a second, then it goes into electronic shutter type. And then digital zoom is off, but you can actually set this up here. So let's just say on here, any of these function, like right here, this FN button here, I have this to just immediately turn on and off the rear LCD, because sometimes you just want to shoot with the OVF, right? But if you do a long press on any of the custom functions, here you go, look at that. So this is on live view, lens detection, focus aid. So you can go through all these here and pick all these different settings that you can use for the custom function. You can just immediately change these things right here. And so, like I said, here, I have this set up for immediate exposure compensation, but there is another feature you can use this for. So let's just go to custom control. Now here it says custom wheel, and notice I have this on exposure comp. Instead, you can go to focus aid, right? So I pick focus aid. So now if I do this, it immediately becomes, so it's hard to show you here because I'm in my studio, but let's just do a minimum focus here. And so now if you want to focus on something, you can just zoom in like that. See that? Again, it's hard to show you here because it's in my studio, but you can zoom in, and what you're zooming in on is actually stabilized. So it makes it easier for you to focus peak and focus in. So that's the two options, or you just turn it off. So here, custom control, wheel. So it's either focus aid, exposure comp, or just no function. So I prefer it as exposure comp. So there you go. That's my exposure comp. So there you go. That's my main settings. That has access to everything that I want when I'm shooting. And I'm used to shooting rangefinder style. I actually like this setup here because if you notice, here's my 20-year-old M7 here, and the M7, unlike the M6, has an on and off switch. It actually mechanically locks this as well as it just turns off electronics. And so you basically pull the turn on and you push the turn off. Well, guess what? Pull the turn on, push the turn off. So shooting between my M7 and this M11 is just very fluid. And that's kind of the reason why a lot of people like shooting with digital M's. And when you go between your film camera and your digital camera, shooting the same way, shooting the same style, even the feel of it, the same thickness here. So I'll show you here the reason why I never liked the bottom plate on the digital M's, because it was a throwback to the film era, right? So the film fits in here, you put it in here, you do this, and you kind of put this cap on, right? For those of you wondering, what is this? This is Dr. Andreas Kaufmann's signature. He signed this for us when Juan and I were in Germany. So thank you, Dr. Kaufmann, for signing. But here, I'll show you. Look at this. Look at this here. It is the same. Look at that. It's exactly the same size. I'll follow it to the end here. See that? So even to feel this, when I pick this up, first of all, it's lighter than my film M because of that aluminum top, so it makes a huge difference. And just the thickness of it, everything, it just feels like my film M. So if you have a film M and you want to go to a digital M, the M9 and the M240 is thicker, and then from the M10 and then up to the M11, they're the same thickness. And now with this aluminum top, you're actually lighter than a lot of the film M's. And I'm actually happy that there's no bottom plate. It was a kind of a cool retro thing to have, but in actual function, it was kind of a pain, because if you had it on a tripod and you wanted to take stuff, you had a tripod plate on, and then you want to take your battery out or memory card out, you have to take that plate off first. And now you just immediately have access to your battery, and you have access to your SD card, and you have access to your USB-C connection, which you can tether as well, right? So you could pull your images and put this right onto either your iPhone or onto your computer or onto your iPad right from this port here, and without having to take anything off. So I prefer no bottom plate. And I didn't mention this as well as you also get an external charger. So yes, you can charge in body, but you do get this really cool charger here. And I always appreciate Leica's chargers. It tells you when you are at 80%. And so this is also a USB-C connection, so you don't necessarily have to use their cable, but they do give you this connection here, as well as this USB-C to USB-A connector here. And so those are all my thoughts. I love the new sensor. I have to do further testing. According to Leica, this is a pre-production copy. So a lot of you guys are probably wondering, well, I want to see the difference between 60, 36, 18 megapixel in low light. I will do it when they send me a production copy, but I did play around with it and I shot in like really cold. I think it says 0 degrees, but I went down to like -10 in the snow. It worked great in the cold. It worked great. Well, it's only cold right now. No problems. It feels good, but again, I cannot share pixel peaking images so you can see the differences. So wait for me to get a production copy. But if you drop the megapixel count, then you get a little bit better performance. And so again, maybe I might insert it here. It tells you the dynamic range. I think you get a little extra stop of dynamic range when you do drop the megapixel count. But in general, other than just testing it, I stuck to 60 megapixels because I really love that extra resolution. One more thing I forgot to mention is that when you are metering using the new M11, they are actually always metering off the sensor. They're not metering off of the shutter plane, which if you look at the M7, you can see that dot there, and that is the shutter, and it's metered off of that, and that is called center weight average, and that's kind of the old way. It is off the film plane, but it's not as accurate. And for those of you that like to shoot Leica, you kind of got used to shooting center weighted average. Well, with this new Leica M11, Leica is saying that you will get more accurate metering because the shutter is always open. So even if you turn off right here, if you turn off the LCD back, you notice the shutter still stays open because that's how it meters. It's metering off. And you can still do center weighted, you can still do spot, and you can also do the multi-field, multi-segment metering, whatever they call it. And I don't know, I asked Leica if it is the same meter pattern as the SL2 or the Q2. They didn't get back to me in time, so I don't know for sure, but in my full review, I will let you know. But so again, I'd like to thank KEH Camera for sponsoring this video. And I didn't know this, but KEH did mention to me that they actually are resellers of Leica, so they can actually order in the new M11. And so if you are interested in buying a new Leica M11, you can actually approach KEH. And the advantage of that is because if you have an M10 or M10R or an M9 or M240, you can trade it in a KEH and as well as order a brand new M11 and put it towards that. And so KEH would be a great place to go to buy the new M11, but as well as to buy used gear like used M-body film bodies as well as lenses. So thanks KEH for sponsoring this video. They have up to 60,000 items in stock, up to 40% below retail. KEH 100% approved, appraised, graded, renewed, and resold. And you can phone them to get a more accurate quote. You can even do a video chat with them. A 21-day return or exchange policy, 180-day warranty. So that's almost like half a year of warranty. Graded by experts, renewed with care, one of a kind, sustainable, and exchangeable. So I'll have affiliate links down below. At this time, I think up until March, you will receive 5% if you use the links down below when you buy anything, and you get 5% more if you sell something. And if you buy and sell at the same time, you get a total of 10%. So thank you so much, Leica USA. Thank you, Kiran, for sending this to me, and Nathan as well for all your help. And I do look forward to getting the production copy. And so let me know down below if you have any questions about this camera. And we'll talk to you soon. And happy, let's just do this camera here. Happy shooting. All right. Peace.